Pluto in Aquarius is exposing the shadow of progress, the ways we chase innovation and technology, even at the expense of the earth, our bodies, our communities. Progress can offer some level of liberation, but it can also chain us. It can make us lose our humanity. And today I want to talk about this aspect of Pluto in Aquarius and the shadow of progress, and how we can use a different aspect of Pluto in Aquarius to remember what this is all really about. I think it's really important for us to zoom out every once in a while and remember what the outer planets are doing. So often in our day-to-day, we hear, things like Mars square Pluto. This video is coming out just after Mars squares Pluto. And we think about it archetypally, and I love archetypal astrology, of what Mars square Pluto means. And generally we feel it most in the Mars part of our house because Mars is a personal planet, whereas Pluto is more distant, right? But if we think about the overarching theme of Pluto and Aquarius and what it's trying to do, every 2 years, Mars is going to square it from Scorpio. And what is that building towards in your life? And then we zoom out again and we think about, what is my role in the collective? Right? And how is Pluto and Aquarius trying to usher me into that role through these aspects, through its 20-year time frame in Aquarius? When we can zoom out and see the bigger picture, it can actually really help us shift our perspective, especially when we're going through a dark time or a difficult period, to recognize that not only are we doing this in essence for the larger theme of our story, but a larger theme of the collective evolution as well. I actually have a playlist for these longer transits. I'll have it in the description box below. If you ever need to remember what the bigger storyline is about, those are great videos to watch or listen to. So today we're going to talk about Pluto, Aquarius, a little bit about the myths. I've talked about the Aquarian myths, well, at least the Uranus myths with my Uranus and Gemini videos. And then we're going to talk about the antidote and how we can rebuild communities in a way that is empowering. Because Pluto shows us where there is power, but he also shows us through excavation what we need to transform from the underworld. So it's not just about there's power in communities. We're being faced with a lot of power struggles and necessary transformations, deaths, and rebirths in our sense of what community means, and other Aquarian themes as well. In a lot of ways, we can associate Aquarius to Uranus, but of course, the modern ruler of Aquarius is Saturn. So Aquarius has Saturn and Uranus, both, and those energies are quite different, but in a lot of ways also quite similar. Aquarius is the water bearer. Even though it's an air sign, it's a water bearer. And this is because, if you notice, it's always pouring water out of the cup. It's here to give and disseminate divine knowledge. This is very important for Aquarius. So it's not just about the future. It's not just about tech and AI and all these things. It's here to actually bring sustenance to the collective through that divine knowledge and wisdom. At its best, it can really uplift humanity and give hope to a higher ideal, to a bigger vision. However, Aquarius can become overly abstract. Both Uranus and Saturn are far away from the sun and the moon, our consciousness and our unconscious, the parts of us that are very close to us. That distance gives perspective, but it often loses humanity. On the Aquarius-Leo axis, we often associate Aquarius to the collective or humanitarian causes, and this is very true. However, sometimes Aquarius does this at the expense of the individual. They see groups of people. It's less about what that person wants, but rather what is good for the collective, right? I see this tension actually a lot in a lot of my relationships because I have Saturn in Aquarius, but I have some more prominent Leo placements. And I attract a lot of Aquarian people in my life. And it's just interesting how you can see this juxtaposition where I'm like, hey, and Aquarian people can be super weird and super goofy and super unique, right? That's the word I use for Aquarius, is unique. But they really don't like when somebody wants to get all the attention, right? They've got ideals they're trying to fulfill here. Like, less about you, okay? In my Uranus and Gemini video, I talked about, I gave an example of Elon Musk being a Mars and North Node in Aquarius, right? If we think about his desire for progress and advancement at any cost, and the things that he does for humanity without really looking at a person, Leo, and using the heart, which is ruled by Leo, to say, like, how is this affecting you? How is this affecting you? This can also, in essence, go against or defy, in some ways, nature. And I'm going to explain how. So I'm not going to go too deep into the myths. I mentioned them in the Uranus and Gemini video. But there are two gods associated with Uranus. One is Prometheus. That's the one that's most associated with Uranus. And the other one is Uranus. Both of them have a weird relationship or some sort of contention with natural order or the earth. Uranus with Gaia, who he was married to before she had one of their sons castrate him and then he left. And Prometheus because he stole fire from the gods and rebelled against the natural order, which then was depicted by the gods. And he suffered greatly for it. Zeus punished him for all of eternity until Chiron gave up his immortality for Prometheus. But he was sent to suffer on top of a mountain for all of eternity. And this is, in essence, a little bit of the suffering that we gain from consciousness, the pain of consciousness, right? And the ability of humanity to be able to hold consciousness. It's a lot of responsibility to have the consciousness that we have. And we're probably doing our best, but we're not doing that great at it. Even though we have the liberation of the ability to have consciousness in our lives, we have hurt a lot of nature with that information. We've gone against the natural order in a lot of ways, and we've hurt a lot of people. Both of those myths warn us that when progress abandons the earth, when it abandons the body, imbalance and suffering follow. Carl Jung said that the salvation of the world lies in the salvation of the individual soul. So if we think about it from that perspective, that's more Leo, right? And this is a lot of my work that I do in my one-on-one sessions, and really what I'm teaching here and in my workshops and what I plan on teaching is that healing, right? Because I'm not here to just disseminate information personally. I'm here to harness transformation and healing in other people, and that does not happen through information. Because while information is really important, air signs like Aquarius, and now we've got Uranus and Gemini, air sign as well, are known for having more of a difficulty to connecting with the body, right? They govern the thoughts, words, air. When we are not connected to the body in a bigger way, we are not connected to earth. We are not in relationship with the earth. This has consequences on our individual soul, but then also humanity. Saying that salvation of the world lies in the salvation of the individual soul, in my opinion, is not really the end of the story there, right? Because what happens when the individual soul reaches individuation in in-depth psychology, which is wholeness, integration of the shadows and the conscious egoic self into the capital S self, is that now that person has a responsibility, right? That's the suffering of consciousness. Liz Green says that Jung believed that the only resolution of the suffering lies in giving something back to the collective. an individual creation to replace the fire that has been stolen. So it's not just to salvage your soul and then go off into the mountainside, maybe for very select people, and never look at humanity again, but it's to salvage your soul, to individuate and become whole so that you can offer the world your individual creation. And as I talked about in my workshop that I recently did and in some videos that I've done as well, it's difficult to know what we offer the world if we haven't had the descent into the soul path, which goes through the body because it's the feminine. So once again, we see this theme of the body coming up, Earth, not neglecting Earth at the expense or for the advancement of technology and medicine and science. And as somebody who is a ethical vegan, I have a lot to say about that from the animal standpoint, but we're not going to go super deep into it today. But I would say that we're probably not doing such an amazing job, right? A lot of advancement at the expense of the rainforest, at the expense of animals, at the expense of humans as well. So Pluto transforms through this shadow, power, right? Destruction, which then harnesses a rebirth of some sorts. And in Aquarius, this is revealing how our relationship to all of those things I mentioned, those Aquarian themes, has become distorted in some way. One of the biggest things that I see with the advancement of technology and this age of information, which is ending, by the way, I'll have a video about that soon. It's ending if we choose for it to end in our lives. But one of the biggest things that it's doing in our lives is that it is replacing human connection. I often talk about my work being about somatic shadow work, but honestly, my work is truly about connecting with other people. We think that information, like you come to an astrology reading, go to a therapist, we think that the thing that they do is going to help us heal, but actually they've looked into this and they found that the relationship between the healer and the healee, I don't know, that's not a word, but the other person, is the most profound aspect, is the relationship, the connection, feeling seen and validated. When we have screens in front of our face all the time, we don't have the ability to communicate, right? People are communicating with AI rather than a therapist or with a person. And especially for kids growing up in this age, that has shown to be pretty detrimental. We're just seeing in the rates of children and their mental health. Connection is crucial to our development as humans. It is crucial. And we are cutting ourselves off from the thing that feeds us, that feeds our souls. This leads me into the gift of Pluto and Aquarius, right? It's not all bad here. Pluto in Aquarius also brings the power of community, right? Because Aquarius rules communities, networks, shared power, collective power. It's asking us to find strength in communities without losing our individual humanity, our heart. So on a higher octave here, as a community, the progress that we can look toward is one that empowers people, that protects animals and nature, that's rooted in earth and our bodies, equity and collective healing, rather than one that simply makes us feel like our ideologies were correct, were right. I talked about this in my Pluto and Aquarius video, how the shadow side of Aquarius can be that they believe that their ideologies are objective truth. And that if somebody's idea of progress is different than theirs, then they are the enemy. They are wrong. And so we have all sorts of ideological warfare in that way. How can we understand that community does not have to rob us of our humanity, right? So I have a question for you, and as you're watching this video and thinking about these themes that I've mentioned here, and that question is, what kind of future are we building together? Is it one that abandons Earth? Is it one that abandons our bodies? Or is it ones that sustain our bodies, that sustain the Earth? Is there balance there? How can you start creating that in your own life? Pluto in Aquarius is both here to show us the shadow of progress, but also the power of community. Community that develops around our humanity, around our hearts, around love. That's rooted in a deep sense of support, not just ideology. Because innovation and technology and progress aren't inherently bad. It's just when they happen at the expense of Earth, Gaia, the one who gives life, who sustains us. That's when we recognize that progress that is at the expense of that isn't really progress at all. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the shadow of progress and the power of community. What does that look like for you? Where's Pluto going through your chart? And how can you see your role in the bigger picture here that we are trying to create as these outer planets move through these signs? If you've enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe and like this video. If you've enjoyed this video, please make sure to like and subscribe. Check out my offerings in the description box below. I have one-on-one sessions, I have workshops. Follow my Substack or subscribe to my Substack to be the first to know about my workshops. And make sure you subscribe so that you can get, and make sure you subscribe for more on Pluto and Aquarius and other themes and the myths that help us understand these times that we're in. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next time.